Bueno, eso es solamente el comienzo de lo que es una serie que no solamente es controversial, sino que promete cuestionar cada idea que usted tenga sobre el Playboy, la revista y la cultura de Playboy. Es un documental que está formado por 12 partes en su primera temporada y que se va a emitir, repito, 2 episodios por semana a partir del 19 de junio a las 22 horas. Now is the time that I would like to introduce to the Playmate of January 1973 and also head of promotions for Playboy organization, Mickey Garcia. Mickey, first and foremost, thank you so much for joining us. It's a real pleasure and honor to have you here.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm very pleased to be here.
Please start telling us how the you, coming from a very conservative family, end up becoming Playmate January 1973.
Yes, it was unusual because I went all through Catholic school until the end of my high school years, and that's when we lived in Panama. However, um, I was part of the pageant world, and when I was competing for the Miss California World pageant, I was Miss Sacramento. Marilyn Grabowski found me. She was the photo editor of Playboy magazine. She happened to be a judge, and she asked me if I would like to be a playmate. And she really painted a beautiful picture for me. I wasn't interested in doing nudes, small bikinis, okay, but not nudes. And so we had an ongoing conversations until finally I thought, well, maybe okay, I will try it. But yes, it was um, it was highly controversial for me and my family to pose nude for Playboy magazine. But I did. I was young and I was part of the sexual revolution.
But you also realize at one point, or I think at least for what you were saying in your book, that you find a way to make a career and you become the head of promotions for Playboy. What happened then?
Well, actually, I wanted to work for Playboy um, prior to me finishing up my tour as a Playmate traveling for the magazine. I decided that I wanted to be an executive and I wanted to help women, and I thought it would be a really good future for me. So I went ahead and once the opening came up, then I went ahead and interviewed for it, and I was chosen to be director of Playmate Promotions. I was very pleased with that assignment because prior to that, they didn't have a director, and I thought that the women deserved um, more attention and certainly more security than I had traveling on the road for Playboy.
When was the moment that you realized that all the good and positive thoughts that you were having, or all the ideas and illusion that they were painting for you, was not real?
Yeah. Well, I think the first time actually that it wasn't that I knew that it was bigger than I was, and that was when I wasn't able to become Playmate of the Year, even though it had been promised to me. That was part of the deal for me to be Playmate of the Month. Hefner wanted me to sleep with him. I refused. I was propositioned 3 times. I refused. But nevertheless, I wanted to work for the magazine. He didn't force himself on me, and so I started as the director. I got to know the playmates. They became close to me, and I was their confidant. I was like Mother Superior. So I would hear a lot of the things that were happening at the mansion, and also I would start to notice some of the women were not looking as well as they should, and that was due to taking drugs. And where were they getting the drugs? Well, they were getting them at the Playboy Mansion. And so that was extremely difficult. I wanted to give these women as much opportunities as possible because they had so much publicity about being a playmate. Maybe some of them wanted to be actresses or to be in other phases of the entertainment industry. So I did what I could to promote them. But it was difficult because Hefner was intervening and maybe calling my secretary. Well, it would be his secretary calling my secretary, and trying to get dates and that kind of thing. So it was a constant balance of doing what I thought was the best for the playmates, and also maintaining my position at Playboy. I was one of the few female executives at that time, and I was almost considered an interloper because of my Playmate background. Other executives kept, they kind of had a saying, Mickey has Hef's ear, and people were a little bit afraid of me and kept a distance. But I overcame that as much as possible, and by doing the way I managed to do it was by keeping copious notes and documentation, so that I was very well prepared for any type of meeting or anything that needed to be done. And I was on call 24 hours a day. It was a very stressful job, but I did enjoy it. In the beginning, of course, I was director for 6 years, and I loved the women. I thought they were great, and I could relate to them. I understood what their backgrounds were because I spent time interviewing them. I also understood what their ambitions were, and I did the best that I could. Primarily, I wanted to make sure that they were safe on Playmate promotions because I was raped on one of the promotions.
Um, I know it's a very uncomfortable subject, but before we go there, I want to add to this conversation Alexandra Dean, who's also with us. Alexandra, are you with us?
I am. Thank you for having me.
Hi, Alexandra. Thank you for becoming the producer. And once again, you did it again. You're able to put front and center subjects that people don't know about it. And even though they are rumors, you're always so brave to put it as part of the truth that needs to be told in order to finally give the respect that women deserve and need. You have done before with anthology, and now you do it with Playboy. So before I go with you, I don't want to miss this opportunity. And thank you for being with us. Mickey, sorry to put you in an uncomfortable situation, but something bad happened to you. You were raped.
Yes, yes, I was.
So if you don't mind, can you tell us how, when everything's so perfect, was so Disney-like, when that situation happened, and why you were not able to say or do anything about it?
Well, um, first of all, um, a man, he was a very famous television actor at the time, and he was on a very popular TV show. And he was appearing at an auto show like I was and signing autographs. And he came to my room because I had asked if anyone had some shampoo. I didn't have any, and apparently there wasn't any. And I said, okay, because he was booked as a celebrity as I was. He came to my room with a shampoo and then pushed open the door and forced himself in. And at that moment, I knew I was in trouble. And I went to the other side of the room where the telephone was, and I said I was going to call the police. And he very methodically told me that I was wearing the rabbit head logo on my sweater, and no one was going to believe me. They were going to believe him. He had money. He had the attorneys who could actually fight it, and he was already in my room, so he could say he was invited. I realized in that moment I was caught. I There was no way out, and I just prayed to God that he wasn't going to really harm me. I just hoped that it would be over. And unfortunately, he raped me twice. Afterwards, I was terribly ashamed, of course, and I could just see all of my dreams for my future going out the window. If I told the police, then he would come back with his attorneys and he would lie. If I told Playboy, very possibly they would not continue to book me on Playmate promotions, and I was making very good money. I had a good future in front of me, and I made the decision not to report it to the police. And this would have been 1973. They didn't have um, um, rape kits at that point. There would be no way that I could have actually proven what he did to me. So I made what I thought to be the most practical decision that I could, is to keep my mouth shut and just make make the best I could out of the situation moving forward. I wish I could reveal who he is, but I can't.
I understand. You have referred to the Playboy organization as a cult. That's the best word to describe the way they were conducting themselves to the owner, not only of the mansion, but the owner of everyone who was living within the mansion.
Well, I think you're very correct in saying that Hefner owned everything, because he really did. He really owned everything in and everyone in the Playboy world. There was a slow process of what people now call grooming. We didn't know too much about cults back then, but certainly Playboy had all the earmarkings of a cult, because you were expected to act a certain way, to say certain things about the brand. And within that cosmos of Playboy, Hefner had complete control. He had control over the women's finances, how many promotions they could actually get. We had a contract that held us for 2 years. If you were Playmate of the Month, you had a contract for 2 years where you could not do any modeling without asking Playboy's written permission. And that would be certainly either semi-nude or nude, but nevertheless, the contract was restrictive. And so he had you contractually, he had you financially, socially. He also had you because he wanted the women to compete with themselves for Playmate of the Year. So you had really two contests, for one for Playmate of the Month, the second for Playmate of the Year. Well, that kind of that made women really want to be nice to Hefner, and I don't believe that any of them came in knowing full well what was actually going to happen to them. Once they were there was a peer pressure, and they had a couple of executives within Playboy who was actually saying to the women, "Listen, this is the way it has to be. If you don't play ball, you're out. You're going to lose everything." And so many of these women maybe they came from foster care, or they were adopted. Maybe they came from a violent background or abusive relationship. They were afraid. Some women came from a wonderful background and loving family, and yet they were still prey to Hugh Hefner. And that's where it became, where you really had to look at it. It was a cult, because you were groomed into thinking that he was the person to call all the shots. He had control of everything, and he made it seem so glamorous and wonderful. He made you feel special. He made you feel like he loved. It was, it was, it was, as he said, he called the mansion Shangri-La. And that's the way it was. And he always thought he was Rick Blaine in Casablanca. Quite the opposite. but but to a young woman who is vulnerable, it was very easy for him to gain control over them. And to this day, uh, there are women and former Playboy employees, and say like bunnies that worked in the clubs, or employees that worked at the company, and certainly the Playmates. There are so many of them that are still, as I say, worshiping at the altar of Hugh Hefner. This is absolutely crazy. This man has done huge damage to women. I suffered terribly in so many ways. I did not have a personal relationship with him, or physical, I should say physical, because I did have a personal relationship with him. um, I was part of the inner circle. I even worked on contracts involving playmates, and so I was privy to so many secrets within the company, and yet I didn't sign an NDA, and I don't know why. I think that when I was first employed, no one thought I was going to last. I was probably what, maybe one time Christy said it in front of me, an airhead. She called the Playmates airheads. And in that very brief moment, I think she realized she had made a mistake, because she was talking to one of those Playmates. And in essence, she would be calling me an airhead. Okay. Uh, so it was difficult. It was very difficult. And to this day, I wonder, when, because I did work with Christy Hefner, why she didn't see what was happening with her father. She certainly understood what was happening with the women. That was quite obvious what was going on, but you could see these women being so controlled that they were at the mansion and taking drugs, going upstairs, and participating in activities that really, I don't think the vast majority of them would have ever dealt with in their own lives, in what I would say a normal lifestyle. You have to taught them things that they will never forget, and it coerced them into doing things that I think haunts them to this day. There are things that haunt me, and I was never in his bedroom. So he had complete control mentally, physically, emotionally over these women.
But it's no surprise then that, and this question is for you, Alexandra, that Hugh Hefner was admiring from everyone Charles Manson. He admired him, almost obsessed, according to his biographers, with him and the way he could control women who called him
Yeah.
his part. He was the owner of the woman. Eh, How far Hugh Hefner really went into thinking that he was the owner and was untouchable, Alexander?
I think it evolved slowly over time. You know, Hugh Hefner slowly became the head of this empire of women, that he could control, and it went to his head. And he started to realize that pitting these women against each other in the Playmate of the Year competition was just the top of the pyramid. He was also bringing in women that he numbered a little lower than the Playmates, 6 or 5 or 4. And there were men in his circle who were interested in all of those women. So they were being fed women all the time through this pyramid structure that Hefner created, in which he was making all the women compete with each other. And so he could control them and make them keep going toward the men that he was trying to influence.
But in addition to that, there were also known the pig nights. The pig nights were nights when prostitutes will be invited to the Playboy mansion to satisfy different needs. So when the so-called empowerment of women, they're supposed to be Playboy, giving career opportunities and so on, that they did at once upon a time, it became the ultimate degradation for women. When that switch
When did
happened, or it was always a joke. Sorry.
it happened? Gradually. I think Hefner really thought, in many ways, he was giving women an opportunity to become famous and to become influential. At the same time, that wasn't really obviously his goal because so many women felt used up and burned when they went to the mansion. And so many of the women who talked to me felt like it was not a good decision for them and they regretted it bitterly. And so what I think happened is over time, Hefner started to prioritize this sexual Shangri-La where he was bringing all his friends and all these movie stars over the women. And the women became playthings in this Shangri-La, and he needed an inexhaustible supply of these playthings. And some of them were prostitutes because, that's what he would have numbered right at the bottom of his pyramid, a one or a two. A prostitute off of the street was at the bottom of the pyramid. And then he also was bringing in, girls from the campus at, the UC close by. He was bringing in bunnies from his clubs. He was bringing in wannabe playmates and models, actual playmates and playmates of the year. So he had to have this inexhaustible supply of women always coming through the mansion, and the priority became turning them into sexual playthings. And that worked for a
So
few people,
everything
but
was
for a lot
for
of people,
these
yeah, for a lot of
playthings, and we're talking about human beings and lives that were
yeah,
scarred forever.
yeah,
These playthings, the word you're using, the toys of choice, their life were destroyed forever in more ways than
yeah.
one. But it's also certain part of repressed that always saying, "Come on, it was Playboy. What you were thinking? It was all about power and money. It was all about power and money."
Well, that is, if you say, oh, come on, it was Playboy, it was all about power and money, I think you're ignoring the era that Playboy came up in. The era was of sexual freedom, of experimentation, of female empowerment. All of this was happening at that time. Women were trying to figure out what was freedom, what was empowerment. And for many women, being proud of their bodies and their sexuality, going out and having a more free relationship with their body was part of becoming empowered. And Playboy was great at selling women on the dream that, being a beautiful nude in this magazine was going to be a powerful move. And if you ignore that, then I think you diminish the experience that these women had. Many women did feel empowered by being in the magazine. It was a good career move. What wasn't a good career move was being part of Hefner's empire and being pulled into this cult-like world where he also wanted you to become his sex toy.
Now, one of the things, Vicky, that struck me the most was when Holly Madison, a girl who was also Playmate, and everybody have seen it in entertainment with a series about the girls of Playboy Mansion, that it was also presented as something not harmful at all for women. I'm able to see now that after she was with Hugh Hefner for such a long time, now she is saying into her words that was not only seduction and manipulation, but it was in a way the syndrome of Stockholm, the one that people who are kidnapped feeling from the captors. Do you honestly believe that that could be a true description of what these women were feeling or thinking once they were inside of the mansion, Nikki?
Well, first of all, I have to clarify something. And Holly Madison was not a playmate. And she was one of Hugh Hefner's girlfriends, and she was being paid to be his companion and to live at the mansion and to promote Playboy. And then, of course, she was in Girls Next Door. Um, um, with, I'm sorry, I kind of lost my train of thought.
She was saying that leaving, she got seduced. She was by the
Yes,
whole Playboy thing, and then
yes,
she was thinking
yes,
that at one point she was in love with Hugh Hefner, but then she
yes,
realized that it was the syndrome of Stockholm because it was all
yes.
about her
Yes,
after.
like a Stockholm syndrome. Yes, yes, I
Mhm.
believe that to be true. I believe that to be true. I think she was entrapped and didn't realize what was going on. Again, she was very young. And I think that she thought that well, she knew she was with a very powerful man. But again, she did recognize what her position was. However, he was feeding her lies, you know. He was charming her and telling her they would have a life together. She was hoping to have children and all of that. So there is again there's this cult type of hold that he had on women, and I believe he did have a hold on Holly. The difference between the playmates that I managed and Holly, Holly came after me, but the difference would be Holly was making money through the TV show, which I think was wonderful. I think she should have been paid more, even more than she was being paid, and certainly to live there at the mansion, because there were other women living at the mansion that he was, lining them up and giving them cash a week, and then if they didn't do something right, he wanted to withhold some money. So again, it was total control. And Holly has spoken out about it quite articulately. I support her in what she is saying, but she was not a playmate, nor were the other girls next door. We had a different dynamic going with Hefner than Holly did. And how this all got muddied was through Hefner allowing the press to call her and the other women in the girls next door, allowing them to call them playmates or bunnies. That's not true. A playmate is the woman in the centerfold. A bunny is a woman who worked in the Playboy Club. Holly and the others, like Bridget Marquette and others, they were girlfriends and they were stars in the girls next door. But
Can I just
nevertheless,
add to
we were all involved in the Playboy world, and it was cult like. I'm going to say cult. It has been said. Holly said cult. Believe me, there is a following to this day that is very difficult to break, and there has been severe backlash because of the women speaking out in secrets of Playboy.
Okay, we have seen and hear rape, manipulation, of, of utilization of women rights. Some minors, rumors are saying that some minors were also involved. There were also this pyramid with different use of women for different purposes, as you pointed out again, Alexandra. There are also crimes, very well-known crimes, like Dorothy Stratton, that were heavily publicized everywhere. We have heard about very dark characters like Don Cornelius and his adventures, to say the least, with certain women who disappeared for a couple of days, and all of them accusing them of horrible crimes, and nobody have been able to go to jail. How do you explain that? That after so long, finally, we are able to talk about this freely. Alexander, if you can show some light about it.
Yeah. Why are we allowed to talk about this now? I mean, the simple answer is that Hefner is dead. You know, once he died, he didn't have the same power over people. And he was silencing people, including Mickey Garcia, who you're hearing from today. He did threaten people. You see it in our first episode. He was very, very powerful in the media. He knew everybody in the media, and he also knew everyone in the world of publishing. And so you couldn't just go out and run an article that criticized Hefner. You couldn't write a book that criticized Hefner without Hefner finding out and Hefner putting a stop to it.
Understood. Mickey, is anything you want to add to that?
Well, what she's saying is absolutely true. Hefner has silenced me in many ways. He silenced me with a book. He silenced me within the Playboy world. He ostracized me. I did testify against him at the U.S. Attorney Edwin Meese's Commission on Pornography. And that was a difficult decision for me to make. And I sat down with my father and talked to him about it, and he was fully he supported me fully in moving ahead and testifying. So I did, and I went before the panel and told them exactly what was going on with the women, all of the sexual misconduct and the abuse of the women. I thought if Hefner was not going to allow me to write a book, and he did threaten a publisher that I had, um, and demanded a manuscript, by the way, demanded a manuscript, if you can imagine. And this is a man who has hid behind the First Amendment for years and made his living off of the First Amendment. Um, but uh, it's it's oh gosh, it's such an intricate subject. Uh, I was just simply censored and silenced through the years. I never lost contact with Playmates, and I fought tremendously. I spoke to Hefner on the phone. This is even after I left Playboy. I resigned because I wanted. I couldn't handle the sadness anymore with the Playmates, and I couldn't make a difference. He wouldn't allow it, so I did. But nevertheless, he even though I would try to intervene later, and I wrote several letters that his butler had to sign for, and he answered me, if you can believe this. And I went over many of the secrets that the public really doesn't know about the real relationship that Playmates with had with Hugh Hefner and the company itself. And so he wouldn't allow me to really speak openly. And as Alex said, he had control of the media and he had control of publishing, and he himself was a publisher, and yet he was the one to be able to shut people up. There have been some books written, but certainly not the type of book that I would write, because it would come from my heart, and it also come from it would come from documentation, hard evidence, and that's what I deal in. That is the biggest fear that Hefner had with me. He was terrified that I was going to tell everything that I know. I've told quite a bit of it to Secrets of Playboy, but not everything. And that really needs to come out. It all needs to come out, and everyone needs to really take a good look at what happened so that it never happens again.
Hopefully, we can prevent that to happen again.
Yes, that's
Now,
what we want.
if you're okay with it, I'm going to open this to our media journalists from Brazil, Argentina, Colombia, Chile, and Mexico, so they will be free to ask questions. Lo que quiero pedirles, por favor, a todos y cada uno de los periodistas que hagan una pregunta concreta, directa, pero sobre todo con mucho respeto y mucha sensibilidad. Adelante, por favor. Mariana, let's go with the questions.
Yes, we're going to start with Martina Putruele from Infobae, Argentina.
Hi, hello, Alexandra and Mickey. Very nice to meet you.
Hi.
I have a question for each of you. For Alexandra, how could a culture like Playboy be seen as a symbol of women's liberation for such a long time? And were you surprised with the terrible accounts that women confided in you? And for Mickey, this documentary has already premiered in other countries, so you already have a lot of feedback. Do you feel relief now that people are finally listening to you?
Oh, go ahead. Were you first, Alexandra? Go ahead.
Yes, but I've now forgotten my question. Tell me my question again, because I'm thinking
Sorry.
about Mickey.
Yeah. How could a culture like Playboy be seen as a symbol of women's liberation for such a long time? And were you surprised with the accounts of the women?
So it's kind of two questions. The first question, how did it stay this symbol of sexual liberation for so long? You know, I think Playboy is still a symbol of sexual liberation. You still see women wear the Playboy bunny to kind of symbolize that they feel free in a sexual sense. And I think that the reason that it stayed so powerful for so long is because we as a culture kind of needed a bit of liberation. We were in a kind of a box sexually. We were, all about kind of condemning women for being free with their bodies. So there was something positive that Playboy did that people got very, very attached to. But, it really, really had a dark side. And that dark side obviously really needed to come out. And when I started making these phone calls back during the dark days of the pandemic in early 2020, I started talking to people like Nikki and Sandra Theodore, and I was completely blown away by the stories they were telling me. I had no idea. I grew up watching The Girls Next Door. I grew up, seeing Playboy on the newsstands without ever imagining that this sort of thing was happening. So I really found out by talking to the women who had survived it and being re-educated myself.
Perfect. Now, the next question was for Mickey.
Oh, so now Mickey needs to answer her question, right?
Yes.
Okay, well, yes, Secrets of Playboy has helped me heal in many ways. I have a long road ahead of me, I believe, but nevertheless, it has given me a voice, and for that I will be eternally grateful to Alexandra Dean, her whole team, and also A&E for being brave enough to bring our voices forward. These women that took part really didn't have a voice before, and this is really important in the healing process. For me and my family, there will always be memories, but it has begun to soften in my heart, and that's important. That there's a softening there. Not that I don't feel as strongly as I did before about the monster that Hugh Hefner was, and many of the executives that enabled him, but that maybe I'm able to look at myself in a softer way too, because many years I held myself more accountable, worrying that maybe I didn't do enough. But the reality is I really did as much as I was able to do. And I hope one day we're out.
Thank you so much.
We know it was different times for you, Mickey, and you have done more than a lot. And we're grateful to you as well. Next question, please.
Yes, from Andrés Social from El Tiempo newspaper, Colombia.
Hi, Nikki. Hi, Alexandra. Thank you for your time.
Hi.
Okay. My first question is for Nikki. Nikki, in your opinion, when was the moment, the right moment, when the Playboy empire began to collapse? When changes the opinion about Hefner and his business? And for Alexandra is in the same way, of course.
Wait, Andrés. Vamos a ir primero con la pregunta, Mickey, and then we go.
Okay.
Mickey.
Sorry. Okay.
Well, for me, it really started to collapse with the death of Dorothy Stratton. Mm-hmm. She was a wonderful woman, and she worked for me in Playmate Promotions. Everyone loved her. She was sweet. She was beautiful. There was just everything about her. She was talented. She was just this person that I'll probably never see another person like that again in my life. And it was a terrible tragedy of the way she was killed, the way Paul Snider tortured her before she died, and then the terrible blast of the shotgun to her face, as if to eradicate all of the beauty and spirituality that she brought forth. He wanted to just wipe her off the planet. but that's not true. He didn't. She has a legacy and a following, and will always be an icon in history. As far as the collapse, I think that's really when it started. Hefner and Bogdanovich, went to war, and the company was very upset. I was told to make sure that the Playmates didn't speak to the media, and it was a very sad time. We were not allowed to go to the funeral, and I think that was because the family wanted it to be private, but it was difficult not having any type of closure. As far as Hefner was concerned, I think he saw his bright shining star suddenly evaporate, and he just kept on his path of destruction, and that really was what it was. He was providing these women so many drugs, and allowing so much sex that ordinarily they would not take part in. All of this just played into the decay. It was like decay from within. The readers didn't know. They just saw the glossy pages of the magazine, but they didn't realize that these were real human beings at this mansion, and they were really under the control of Hugh Hefner. I would see the women to where, I couldn't use some of them because they looked emaciated. They were doing too much cocaine, not sleeping, staying at the mansion, obeying Hefner. And again, it was cult-like. They thought they were doing the right thing, and yet they were slowly ruining their chances of actually having a career. Whether it was acting or working behind the camera, it could have been anything, or just going on in their life. He just destroyed so many women. Women don't like to talk about it. It's a dirty secret. Maybe the documentary should have been called "Dirty Secrets of Playboy," but there are plenty of dirty secrets to go around.
Thank you, Mickey.
Thank you, Mickey.
Andrés, tu siguiente pregunta para Alexandra.
Okay, Alexandra, thank you. In your opinion, what is the vision of the new generations about Playboy, about the brand? We are living in a new society that don't tolerate this situation, these manners. But do you have any kind of feedback about the reaction or the idea of the young people about Hefner and your business?
Well, it's a real mix. You do hear a huge amount of feedback on Twitter and TikTok and Facebook, and people are reacting to the series and they're appalled. And especially the younger generation is appalled on behalf of Playmates like Mickey and everybody who had these grand dreams destroyed at Playboy. At the same time, Cardi B is the face of Playboy now, and she is repackaging it for a new generation, and they're just plastering the Playboy bunny on everything, and it continues to sell. It's doing very well financially. So, I think it'll be a bigger battle for people to really get the word out about what really went on at Playboy before that allure of the bunny goes away.
Yeah.
Thank you, Alexandra. Next question, please, Mariana.
Yes, from Maria Inés Saez from Mega TV, Chile.
Hi.
You're on mute. Estás en mute, María Inés.
Ya. Muchas gracias por su tiempo. Se la voy a hacer en español. Quiero preguntarle a Miki, por favor, ¿qué consejos le daría a las jóvenes en estos momentos en que no hay revistas, pero sí hay redes sociales que podrían ser y caer en la manipulación?
Mickey, the next question will be for you, and it's like, which advice would you give or provide to younger women that in these days maybe are not tempted to be part of a magazine, but yes, they are more tempted, even more than ever, for the social media and becoming the power to become an influencer or become the new next phase?
I'm not clear on the question. Is that what advice I've given?
Yes, she would like to know if you can give any advices for women, basically, to avoid any kind of manipulation and fell
Yeah.
victims of the manipulation of people who used to be called in your times magazines and allure you to be part of the magazine. But now these days it's the same with social media. And any other tricks like the fan page and so on.
Yes. Okay. Well, first of all, I come from, I think, another perspective, and I think this is what will empower women more than anything, and that is to really, first of all, establish a relationship with an attorney, and then any type of contract that is presented to you, you hand it to your attorney. You don't sign it. You never take your clothes off before the contract is negotiated. Don't just sign something and allow your rights to be taken away forever, in perpetuity. And that's what
Mm.
Hefner did to us. That is something that has to be stopped. So women today need to take control of what documents that they sign. That's absolutely number one. If you want to own your photos, and if you don't own your photos, you better darn well know what you're going to sign in order to control your destiny. For example, Hefner and Playboy, they went ahead and licensed out our nude photos to the largest hardcore pornography distributor in the world called MindGeek. That is absolutely deplorable, and no one can ever tell me that that was the right thing to do with what he had called us the girls next door. That is abominable, absolutely abominable. As for the woman today with social media, stop sexting. Don't send your photos, your nude photos to your boyfriend. I don't care what's going on. You never send your nude photos anywhere. Do not do any sex tapes because those things will end up on the internet. You can darn well bet on it. And maybe Kim Kardashian and Chris made money from sex tapes that were leaked, but that's not always the case. And you want to be in control, so women have to be responsible for themselves and be in control. It starts with uh, knowing about the contracts and making sure that you are not looped into something that you do not want to be. And the other thing is make sure that you keep your clothes on while the cell phone is clicking away. You want to be in control of that. If a woman wants to go into the adult industry, that should be her choice. But again, I would say the same thing. Make sure that you understand what you're signing and what you're doing, because you're not always going to be that young woman. You're not. You're going to age. I'm 77 years old, and I can still say that I'm proud of my pictures. I was very careful about the placement of my hands and legs and all of that. Editing is a very important part of the process of doing, whether it's film or photos. That's very important also. But women have to be very, very careful. And I would say even for today's Playboy, they still have a centerfold, although it's 4 times a month rather than each month. They're doing it according to the weather. It's summer, spring, winter, and fall playmates. Okay. These women should sign contracts that are equitable. And that means being paid equitably. For God's sakes, give these women the money that they deserve, because Playboy is going to use those photos ad infinitum, and they will make lots of money, and you will get no residuals, royalties, absolutely nothing. So please understand what you're getting into and make it work for you. My advice from my heart is do not make a living from your body. Don't make a living from your looks. Don't even walk the ramp. Don't do any of those things because it just breeds a certain type of atmosphere that's not conducive for women's empowerment. Even though they believe that at the time, I think, it's my opinion, that in the long run, it does not serve the woman well at all. Believe me.
Thank you so
And
much, Nikki.
I work for the most famous promoter in the world.
Thank you so much, Mickey. Mi pregunta para
Thank you.
Alexandra tiene que ver también, ¿cuál es el mensaje de este documental? Por lo que hemos visto realmente está extraordinario, pero también estoy pensando en las nuevas generaciones. ¿Cuál es el mensaje, Alexandra?
Alexandra, she would like to know, she's from Chile, from Mega, and she would like to know which one is the advice or the thoughts that should be, we need to keep as a conclusion of this amazing documentary.
What should we take away? I think
Yes.
I think it's very much along the lines of what Mickey was just saying. I think for women, there is this incredible seduction when we're young to, getting our power from our looks. Because we're young and it's fun and we feel powerful when we're beautiful. And why shouldn't we? And I think the problem is when you put all of your emphasis on your body and your looks, it can be a very, very terrible trap for women because other people manipulate it very easily. But also, what do we do when we age? You know? Who are we when we age if we put all our identity in our looks and that's how we sell ourselves in the world? And I think I don't have any daughters, I have sons, but if I had a daughter, I would spend a lot of time talking to her about this because I truly believe that you do need to enjoy your body, enjoy your sexuality, be free, but at the same time, find another identity for yourself beyond your body and your sexuality where you can put your power and your self-respect and your dignity and grow there, mainly to protect yourself so that you can be powerful as you grow older and you can feel safe.
Wise
Thank you
words
so
from the heart.
much. Both.
Mariana, next question.
Yes, Luciano Guaraldo from UOL, Brazil.
Hi, my question is for Alexandra, but if Mickey wants to chip in as well. We've seen so many shows, fictional TV shows and documentaries about the Playboy Club or the Playboy Mansion. There's a lot of glamour that is usually used to depict the Hugh Hefner's lifestyle. How does it feel to peel away the curtain and show the real mansion or the real Playboy lifestyle that most people didn't get to see with this documentary, the ugly side that sometimes people don't want to see, but we have to deal with what happened and prevent that from happening again.
Yeah, how does it feel to burst the bubble of Playboy? Is that what you're asking? Yeah.
Yes,
exactly. Yeah.
It doesn't always feel good. You don't like to kill people's joy. And it's kind of like Las Vegas, Playboy Mansion was supposed to be what happens at the Playboy Mansion stays at the Playboy Mansion. And it's this adult playground where people could really have fun. And as far as that was true, I had no problem with Playboy. If people are having consensual fun and they feel free and they feel like they can leave their worries at the door and have a wonderful time, I mean, I am the first one to applaud and say, do it, have a wonderful time. But the problem is people were getting destroyed there and there were only very certain people having a great time and other people being treated like animals or worse, or animals shouldn't be treated that way. You do sometimes have to burst the beautiful bubble to tell that kind of a truth. You have to, burst the shiny, pretty bubble, and you have to explain that, everybody has to have fun or it's not really fun. You can't only let some people have fun and everybody else gets it. It's not how it works anymore, not in today's world.
Thank you, Alexandra. Next question, Mariana.
Yes, from Nicolás Lobar from El País newspaper, Uruguay.
Hi.
Hi, thank you very much for your time and thank you for your brave testimony. I was wondering, Alexandra, what about the testimonies to find to this documentary? It was difficult to find a woman to want to talk?
It wasn't difficult to find women who wanted to talk. It was difficult to figure out with them how much to say, when to say it, what was safe. I didn't want to have anyone speak who would regret it. I really didn't want to hurt anyone any more than they'd already been hurt. And so Mickey will tell you it was a long process of discussing it. How do we do this safely? How do you feel like you're telling your story in your own words? I'm not taking the story from you. I'm not reframing it in a way you don't like. It's not easy. And you feel beset by doubt, and you feel frightened for yourself and for the person speaking up, because I didn't know what the fallout would be. I didn't know how much everybody would get attacked. So I didn't know exactly what I was asking of them. So it was a process, and that process did take a very long time and many, many, many conversations.
Thank you. Mariana, next question, please.
Yes, from Nicole Trejo from El Universal newspaper, Mexico.
Nicole?
Hi, thank you for your time, girls. My question is for Nikki, please. What do you think of the current feminist movement, and how do you think it has evolved since the 70s?
Nikki,
You're
the question is
asking
about the
me.
Me Too movement. About the Me Too movement.
Yes, the Me
How
Too
much it has
movement.
changed from the 70s.
Well, I'm thrilled with the Me Too movement. One of my best friends, PJ Maston, was one of the Cosby survivors that first came forward. And I think that's probably one of the first group of women that started to take down a very powerful man, Bill Cosby. And but there have been many women that have taken part in the Me Too movement, and I think that the women of Playboy that have come forward, I think we're very much a part of the Me Too movement, and it takes women really, even though you're afraid, it's time to speak up. You must speak up. You speak up for yourself. You speak up for your dog. You speak up for your sisters. You speak up for everyone, so that this type of manipulation and abuse of women stops. It doesn't have to be someone beating on you. It's psychological. It's coercive abuse. Where somebody comes in and actually starts taking over your life. And that's something that we as women have to stand our ground. So I'm very grateful for the Me Too movement, and I hope that they embrace the women of Playboy that are willing to tell their stories. Because by women helping women, that's how we can overcome. And certainly there are men that that are part of the Me Too movement, I would imagine too. There's a lot of abuse of men. But I can only speak about women, and I love the fact that we now have a voice. And again, I go back to Secrets of Playboy. Believe me, Playboy did not want this to come forward. This docu-series is groundbreaking on every level. And to this day, everyone within the Playboy world that is disintegrating okay? They are very upset, and there are reasons for that, because they don't want their families, they don't want to lose their fame, they don't want their families to know exactly what was going on. But that needs to all be brought to light. It's not for the individual to make the decision for everyone else. It's a collective feeling among the women. We have to speak up and make sure that none of this happens. All of this crap that went through Hollywood and the casting couch, and Hugh Hefner and his casting couch, and just saying, "Hey, have a Quaalude and some booze," and these girls are young. To me, this is all non-consensual sex and manipulation. And the more women just come forward, the more it's going to be easier for other women to be able to have careers, to be able to have families, and to live a good life. So I'm very pleased that I've lived this long to actually see that we have the Me Too movement. I think it's absolutely wonderful, and I applaud them.
Thank you, Mickey. Next question, Mariana, please.
Yes, Vitor Moreno from Folha de São Paulo, Brazil.
Hello.
Yes, hi. This question is for Alexandra. Playboy was very strong in many countries outside the US, like here in Brazil. So is there any chance that foreign issues of Playboy will be included in new episodes of the series? Have you thought about this possibility? And do you think that the pattern of what was happening in the Playboy mansion was being repeated in other countries where Playboy was?
Yeah. Well, Mickey can tell you as well that what was happening at Playboy was happening internationally because Playboy was international. And a lot of the stories I heard were international. A lot of Playmates were being sent abroad to promote Playboy. And some actors within the Playboy universe, including a woman that we very much call out by name, really were sending mates to be raped. I mean, as sexual favors to businessmen around the world. That's part of the extraordinary thing that we discovered when we started this investigation. So this was happening, I'm sure, in Brazil. It happened in Japan. It happened all over the world with Playboy. And not only that, we kind of try and track in episode 9 the fact that what was happening at the mansions started to bleed out into Hollywood and get replicated in what we call these mini mansions. And I think that was this culture that Hefner was creating of pitting women against each other and then using them. That culture was being replicated by men in that inner circle. And then it was, again, being replicated by people who saw them do it powerfully. So I think it had ripple effects that went all over the world. And we now know Peter Nygard in Finland was doing what Hefner did. I mean, holding Hefner on a pedestal and repeating what he did. When he created that world where he could rape women on his island. So we do know this was going on around the world directly because of Hugh Hefner.
Alexandra, sorry to interrupt the question, is what you're describing, not only in Finland, but also in Playboy Mansion, is what many people describe is also the pyramids from the drug lords around the world these days.
Yeah, there's that resonance as well as the same pattern with the drug lords that we hear about around the world. And there is an episode where we really look at how Hugh Hefner made some of his girlfriends into drug mules for him, which was a detail I never thought Hugh Hefner would have gotten involved in, but he was involved in even that.
Correct. Well, before we elaborate on that, let's go to the next question.
Yes, from Nina Landazabal from Colombia Stereo.
Hi. First of all, it's an honor to be with you guys. It's incredible what you did and what you're doing, actually. This is a question for Alexandra, which is, this is not the first time that you do something like this. You did also the documentary about Paris Hilton and her life, right? And I think that a constant is within these two documentaries, and it's also the power of social media. right? The power of something that is honestly at everyone's reach and that everyone can have an access to it without any repercussions. So having this in mind, and also how everything has evolved throughout the years in terms of how people and how young people are aware of what they're getting into, and having platforms like OnlyFans that actually profit from this thing, and this kind of behavior. What do you think will be the role? What is the future of social media with this kind of a new perspective within the young people and honestly everyone that has an availability within this social medias, and just how reachable it is?
OnlyFans is Playboy today. It has the power that Playboy had in Mickey's when Mickey was employed there. It has that huge financial machine behind it. It has the draw. And I think what it asks people to do is more and more risque and dangerous for the people on the platform to keep it, attracting people's attention. In some ways, I think there are some things that are better than Playboy in the past. A lot of people feel they do have control over their image in OnlyFans. But I've also been told recently about traffickers that use OnlyFans and make it look like somebody is in control of their image when they're not. So we're seeing a lot of the same kind of patterns today with OnlyFans as we saw with Playboy and other publications. And the end of the story is, the more things change, the more stay the same. The more we have the same issues. And people really need to know, you have to protect yourself first and foremost. You have to understand that that image is out there forever, and you need to be able to control it, just as Mickey said earlier.
Thank you so much.
Mariana, next question, please.
Yes, Gustavo Meillón from Media Sala, Mexico.
Hi. First of all, thank you for allowing me to be here. This goes for Mickey. Hefner is a pop culture icon, but a monster too. How do you feel when you see all of this attention to the man and the Playboy system in the media?
Well, I believe the media is getting a little bit more real about Hefner. They're not believing everything, and more people are speaking up. And I think that Hefner will. Of course, he's part of history, and he did change our culture. So he is a pop icon and always will be. And the Playmates, the Dolls will always be icons. But I think the media really needs to do a better job at reporting some of this information about women. I think that there is still quite a bit of control behind the scenes. Where it's coming from, I'm not sure, but I'll give at least one example. And I think probably the Hefner estate. Perhaps there's still money being generated from that, and those that benefit from it, perhaps they are trying to make sure that the media doesn't report everything. And so that's something that I've come across. And so I think that the media really has to get a new perspective instead of idolizing this man. As someone said earlier, pulling back the curtain is the right way to do it. Certainly, he contributed to our society with many different things, civil rights and all the rest of that. But by the same token, he ruined so many women's lives. So this man had a duality within him that was that most people didn't understand. Unless you were close to him, you did not know. And now is the time that we should hold him up and really scrutinize him and bring it all out. as far as him being honored for the First Amendment, and upholding it and protecting it, that is a farce. It is an absolute farce. The First Amendment award that Playboy gives, I think they stopped doing it during COVID. Whether they resume it again, I don't know. But if they're going to resume it again, well, then hell, they should hand over the award to myself, to Sandra Theodore, PJ Maston, and all the women that came forward in this documentary. Let's face facts here. You don't hand out awards to journalists and everything and expect them not to kowtow to you in articles. This is baloney, and it is got to stop. So Hugh Hefner First Amendment Awards needs to go away, and the media needs to get real.
Thank you. Okay. Next question, Mariana.
Yes, Tony Goes from Folio de San Pablo, Brazil.
Hello, this is Tony. My question is for both of you, and it comes from my personal experience. When I was a little boy, my father had a collection of Playboy magazines that I loved to, to read in secret. I used to hide behind the curtains, and this whole world of sexuality opened to me. And I can tell you that it had a positive impact in my life. I tend to see sexuality as a positive thing, as something that is good for you, that comes from a higher place. Of course, I never worked for Hugh Hefner, and my experience is very different from you. So we would like to know, what do you think is Playboy's legacy, overall legacy, to the larger culture? I mean, nowadays, Playboy is not a player anymore. Nobody cares about it anymore. But I think it had an impact in the culture. Is it good or bad for you? How do you feel?
Alexandra?
Do you want to take that, Mickey? You want me to take it? All right, start.
Go ahead.
I think Playboy's legacy is tainted now. Playboy had this legacy of being this incredible beginning of the sexual revolution. And I think that your positive relationship with the magazine is very real. And I think many, many people feel that great relationship to their own sexual awakening when they think about Playboy. And I don't think anything will ever take that away. But I do think that we are now realizing that Playboy was not an unalloyed good. It really did a lot of damage too. And if we can be honest and open about that, the next time a new OnlyFans or something like this comes along, we can be a little bit more careful about letting all that be mixed in with the good.
Alexandra, now, thank you, Tony. Muito obrigado, Tony. Now, I would like to go first with you, Alexandra, for your final thoughts and your recommendation for the audience to watch, the reasons they need to watch Secrets of Playboy. And then I will go with Mickey. First, you.
Okay. I think anyone whose relationship with Playboy is that of, the little boy who found their sexuality or the little girl who found their sexuality through Playboy needs to watch, because they need to understand what they were embracing when they embraced Playboy. And any young woman who is, enamored of Playboy or the Playmates in the past, or any woman who wants to use their sexuality, to get on the cover of a magazine or to be famous, needs to watch this series, because you need to understand the potential fallout if that's your choice. You need to understand how people can control you, can manipulate you, can slowly bring you into a world you never thought you were signing up for. And then you can be condemned by the world for even participating in something you thought was fun and joyous and innocent. You can be condemned for years and told that all the bad things that happened to you are your fault because you signed on, right? You need to watch this in order to understand that problem and in order to reevaluate Playboy in your own eyes, so you can understand, the way that we are sexual in the world, the way that we wield our bodies, needs to be up to us needs to be in our own control. Otherwise, we can get terribly hurt.
Mickey, no one is better than you to close with your final thoughts this particular press event. I want to first and foremost say thank you to Alexandra for daring to produce such an amazing documentary. Thank you, Mickey, for coming forward. I think your experience is unique. You were a Playmate, you were the director or head of promotions, but now you're an advocate and you're fighting
Yes,
for women's rights.
yes,
And
yes, I
we
am.
want to hear more of that. So please, your final thoughts.
Yes, you hit on it exactly. I want to continue to advocate for women. There's a lot to do. We have a lot of women still under the spell of the cult, and also younger women who are beautiful and thinking about doing photography or any form of modeling or acting or what have you. It really behooves them to take control of themselves. And as I mentioned before, it's about contracts. There's a very real business side to this business. And if you don't pay attention to it, someone will own your business and you will be their slave. And you don't want to do that. And that's what happened to so many of these what we call classic Playmates. And we basically were we were given the fuzzy side of the lollipop, okay, when it came to finances. And right now, this is so important. Playboy espoused healthy sexuality. I say the same thing. As women, we should celebrate our sexuality and not be exploited by anyone else. Be in control and make sure that your legal affairs are in order. And I believe that that it's time for women to pull back and not keep showing their bodies in a very casual way. And the reason I say that is because once those pictures are out there, again, it's on the internet and someone else has control of you. I'm not trying to censor anyone. I'm just saying, put the pictures out that you want to be there, and be more than just a pretty face or beautiful body. Take control of yourself and enrich your inner spirituality, your in your heart, your mind, your soul. Do those things. Those things are going to be with you until you die. The rest of that's all exterior cosmetic looks. And believe me, I put enough makeup on my face to tell you that this is not what I really look like. And but women need to empower themselves, and I'm so grateful for this opportunity. Thank you so much for inviting me to participate in this event. I appreciate it greatly. You know, my last name's Garcia, so my heart is with Latinos everywhere. And please, we have a lot of beautiful women, and let them be intelligent about how they use their femininity. And it's about healthy sexuality. Don't let anyone take control of you. You own you. Don't let anybody else own you.
Thank you so much, Vicky. Thank you so much, Alexandra. This has been an honor and a pleasure. And we are looking for an amazing premiere of The Secrets of Playboy, first season, 12 episodes. We're going to be airing 2 episodes, 2 episodios cada semana. The premiere son ya en June 19, en junio 19. Así que les deseamos muchos éxitos. Thank you so much. All the very best. Gracias a todos y cada uno de ustedes. No dejen de ver A&E, Los Secretos de Playboy, solamente por A&E. Ahora una promo para compartir. Thank you, gracias Alexandra, muito obrigado, Nikki and Alexandra.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I've enjoyed myself. Thank you.
Take care. Bye bye.
Había un lado muy oscuro de Playboy, del que nadie quiere hablar. Por primera vez,
No me di cuenta que ingresar al mundo de Playboy era una decisión peligrosa.
Entrevistas exclusivas. Algunas celebridades drogaban y agredían sexualmente a varias chicas jóvenes.
Tengo un sistema de vigilancia de punta en la mansión, pero a veces suceden cosas en la habitación.
Las personas que estuvieron ahí son las que saben la verdad.
Secretos de Playboy. Nueva serie. Estreno. Domingo 19 de junio por A&E.
Muchas gracias a todos por la invitación.